Happy Friday to you. My goodness, the last time I get to say that here in 2023. The final trading day of 2023 is upon us. We don't have much time left. If you need to get some trading done before the end of the year, this is it. It's the final trading day, and it's going to be a full trading day. What they do on the last trading day before New Year's, a lot of times, when you get into a holiday weekend like that, they will maybe shorten up the Friday session, but not in this case, because there's a lot of business usually needs to be done to wrap up the year. Lots of banking and closing the books and all that stuff. So it's always a full trading day on the last trading day before we get into the New Year's break. And with that in mind, I want to take a look at some of the overnight trade here, and we'll go through the prices. And then we have all the weekly export sales data that came out this morning, a day late because Christmas was on Monday, and so everything is shoved back. And we went through this yesterday. That'll happen again next week, by the way. So let's look at the overnight trade. I'll bring up the corn market here. Our quotes are from bar chart. And how did we fare? Well, Tammy alluded to this earlier. We had March corn down a penny. Nothing exciting overnight. It was at 473 1/4. Now, I will say that the weekly export sales numbers, they came out at 7:30 Central Time. The overnight trade goes until 7:45. So they actually have about 15 minutes to actually trade on these export sales numbers we'll get to in just a moment. Now, on soybeans, we finished up the Globex trade with March 2 1/4 lower at 1309 3/4. Let's go to the wheat, see what happened there. First, in Chicago, March was just one tick lower. 1/4 cent to the downside at 631 1/4. If you look at Kansas City on that same March contract, we were 2 cents higher at 645 3/4. Now that's interesting. They're gaining back that spread again. Spring wheat trade in Minneapolis, March is 2 3/4 higher this morning at 728 1/4. Well, the cotton market so far has the March contract 29 points higher at 81.24 per pound. Okay, now let's take a look at these weekly export sales numbers, and at the same time, I want to introduce Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. We'll take a look at these together, and we'll have Brian on in a second here. So I had corn, and I always combine the current marketing year and next marketing year for these numbers. You round it off to 1.35 million tons. Soybeans, 983,900 tons, so it was under a million. Soy meal, 268,600 tons. You had soy oil at 900 tons sold. And then you had the wheat at 318,000 tons. I believe the range of trade guesses was between 200 and 600,000. So I guess that would count. But boy, it's way off of the pace from a week or so ago. We also had numbers for grain sorghum and cotton and rice, too. On grain sorghum, what is this? We went backwards. Overall, we had net cancellations or reductions of 50,600 tons negative. Upland cotton. Now, that was a stellar report this week. Upland cotton sales, 372,500 running bales. Wow. Okay. Now, on rice, we had 56,000 tons that were sold last week. Now to Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. Okay, that was a lot of data. Let's cover the weekly export sales numbers. And you were telling me before we came on the air live, you said no overnight sales again, right?
Correct, Marlon. Good morning. Yeah, no overnight sales to report. In fact, nothing this entire week. There were some deliveries against soybeans, about 382 contracts against the January futures as we're into delivery period now. No meal, no soybean oil. And I think those deliveries a little bit unexpected. So we did see a little pressure against soybeans overnight. Part of that was because of rains that are moving into southern Brazil, Argentina, as well as these deliveries. As far as your exports go, these were pretty decent numbers. Now, China, again, biggest buyer of U.S. soybeans, 21.2 million bushels bought of the 36 million sold. Mexico, the best buyer for corn, 21.5 of the 48.9. And they also were the best buyer of U.S. wheat, although it's pretty paltry numbers for wheat, 4.9 million bushels bought by Mexico, and the total sales around 10.1 million. So just nothing that's real outstanding for these export numbers, and they're going to be pretty quickly digested. You alluded to we're going to be open full trading day today, but the volume will die a slow death throughout the day. There should be decent volume right on the opening, so if you have positions that you need to exit, maybe enter, first 15, 20 minutes of the trade is probably the best time of the day to do it as far as volume goes. As late in the session, it will get slowed down to just a snail's pace.
Have this vision of a villain in an old B movie or something that was doing a gradual death. Okay, well, pause right here. We'll come back in a moment. We had beef sales, we had pork sales, and I want to talk about that with Brian in just a moment. Well, we're back with you, and now we're going to take a look at the meat side of the export equation. Let's look at beef and pork sales this past week. How did they fare? Well, you be the judge. Let's take a look here. On the beef, we had total sales of 13,700 tons. Now, you had the pork with sales of 47,800 tons. So the breakdown on the beef was 2,100 tons for this year, which, we have 1 day left? 11,600 for the next year, the calendar year. And on the pork side, 47,800 tons. Wow. You had 23,800 for this year, 24,000 for next year. And I saw where China was a buyer for pork for next year. They bought a little bit of beef as well, I believe, for next year. But overall, I want to get your impression on what kind of sales we're looking at here, Brian. Are they good or bad for the market? What do you think?
Well, for beef, not anything outstanding. This is kind of in the range that we have been here recently, Marlon. Pretty slow, pretty dismal sales for beef. Now, our pork numbers are really rebounded from our recent week's totals. That's almost 48 million tons. That's a pretty big number, and it probably has a lot to do with the pricing structure where we're at near these contract lows. For the hog markets, we're seeing a decent amount of sales, especially when you combine that with the lower U.S. dollar. Mexico and China, again, two of the biggest buyers that are showing up in the beef and pork sales reports this morning. So some good numbers there as far as the pork goes, and should help us out. Try and stage some sort of a little bit of a recovery. There was some cash cattle trade yesterday. We saw 273 on a dress basis, $2 higher, 172 in the South. That's $1 higher, but there's bids being renewed at 172 and up to 173 in the South this morning already. So cash trade looks to be better, and that's going to help this cattle market out. We should see a decent recovery after a couple days of losses here in that cattle market. Now, the one negative besides these beef sales is the steer weights that came out yesterday. We're full 14 pounds heavier than year-ago levels at all-time record, up 2 pounds on the week to 941 pounds for carcass weights. That's a lot of extra tonnage that's hitting the market at the same time that you have more cattle on feed at this time. So the next couple of weeks is probably going to be tough to really sustain or increase this cash markets much, especially when you have cutout values that just will not try and rally along with the cash markets.
But I have to wonder if that winter storm that took place the last few days will cut into that on those carcass weights in the next week or two. I guess that remains to be seen. But yeah, right now we're kind of running ahead there. A quick recap of how we ended up in the market yesterday. Let me bring up live cattle for you. And on the quotes from bar chart, on live cattle, we were mainly lower. February was down 35 cents on the close yesterday at 168.92. On the feeders, March was down 227 at 223.12. We'll see if they can improve on that today. Lean hog market, you had the February down $1.42 yesterday at 68.45, and that, my friend, will be the starting point for this morning. Brian, thanks as always for all the information, and I hope you have a terrific new year in 2024. Thanks for everything you've done to help us out here during 2023. Brian Hoops of Midwest Market Solutions. He's in Springfield, Missouri. We're in Nashville. Tammy, it's a little chilly outside, but we missed the snow.